So after the tremendous race at Iowa Speedway 1 week ago, we head eastwards to the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course for round 5 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series presented by Glacier TV. Once again, Will Vincent, Doyle Johnson in the booth. Doyle, how are you doing today?
Very good, sir. Good afternoon to you and everybody else out there in Raceland. Looks like it's going to be another good one this week, Will.
Oh yeah, definitely 70 laps here today at Mid-Ohio, so this is going to be a very tough race for a number of these drivers. This track, 2.25 miles, 13 corners. Keep an eye out on turn number 2 especially, and the final corner, 2 of your best passing opportunities. We'll take you through a tour of the lap on the parade. However, it looks as though Drew Mazzari is setting the pace at the moment with a 1 minute 9.407, with Nico Brandt currently sat in second and Mark Fangman in third. But it does look as though that there's some groups of drivers very close together, but there's some pretty big spreads throughout the field at the same time.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned in a previous race, wasn't Dror one of the few people that were able to give Nico Brandt last season? I believe he was one of the people that was able to beat Nico last season. And now we've got a new crop of drivers, and it's a whole new ballgame. You got Mark Fangman who just moved into second place in the qualifying ahead of Nico Brandt. Yeah,
last season Drew Mazzari was literally the only driver able to beat Nico Brandt in a one-on-one fight. Nico did lose out twice last season from a clean sweep of wins. However, that was a car incident with a back marker. So it'll be interesting to see with the top 3 currently separated by less than 1/10 of a second. I mean, if you look at the gap between Mark Fangman in second, Nico Brandt in third, the gap between those two is 1/100th of a second. So up front, you can have some very close racing, but still you have Esteban Barral in third, all the way to Mike Larson in 8th. They're separated by less than a second as well.
Yeah, and on a track like this, that even though you're seeing that kind of a time, it looks like it's a pretty big gap, but it really isn't. There's really no difference between Mark Fangman and Nico Brandt on this track at this point in time. It's just a matter of who brakes better or who turns in at the right time. So it's not a question of speed at this point.
And Mark Fangman did set a faster time, moving him further away from Nico Brandt. Now the gap between himself and Drew Mazzari is 15/100ths of a second. As someone look at Jeffrey Kohlbergen losing it on the entry to turn number 2. Jeffrey's currently sat in 15th position, having a tough day yet again in that number 79 Aero X racing machine. It looks as though that is going to be where he starts in this race. We'll take you through the field in a little bit, but a couple of drivers from the more oval side racing today. Sean Stroud, one of those drivers, Andrew Aitken as well. Sean Stroud, literally, as far as last time I checked, hadn't done any practice, put himself up into 7th position. So, good drive by him, and although he's an oval veteran, let's not forget he did cut his teeth first in road racing.
Yeah, and you've got some other people in here too. As you see the field start to, but several people that did not qualify, like you mentioned, Jeffrey Kohlberg and Randy Crossan, who does both, but spends most of his time on the oval side. Although he's been doing a lot of work on the road courses, trying to be competitive, and he starts in number 14th spot. So he's one of those slow, more patient drivers that kind of just tortoise in the hare type driver. Dave Jinks, who's in every race, you see that. And Ryan Norton's interesting appearance here is he's definitely an oval king, so seeing him on a road course might prove to be comical.
So yeah, to take you through your field for round 5 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series, pole position belongs to Drew Mazzari in the number 46 machine, via qualifying time of a 1 minute 9.407. Mark Fangman lines up alongside him in row number 1. Nico Brandt and Esteban Barral make up row number 2, and then Carsten Borchers and Mark Warmington will line up side by side in row number 3. Sean Stroud, Victor last time out at Iowa Speedway, lines up in 7th, with Mike Larson behind him in 8th. Jussi Nimmonen in 9th and Andrew Aitken in 10th. Alan Wilson 11th, Giorgio Ponti with a new paint scheme in 12th. and new paint scheme and new sponsor. Dave Jinks, Randy Crosno in 13th and 14th respectively. Jeffrey Kohlbergen and Ryan Norton line up 15th and 16th. And then we have John Ailes, Rene Murray and Brian Simpson, who did not qualify.
Yeah, and it looks like Mark Warmington already pulled off the track and parked it. He's disconnected. I'm not sure what happened with Mark. I thought he was going to race today.
Yeah, so Mark Warmington, who's a driver who's very competent on both road and ovals, who was starting in 6th position, he looks as though his day is done for now. So, unfortunate times for Mark Warmington. But that will promote Mike Larson to the 3rd in line on the outside row, coming to the green flag. So Mike Larson's got himself 2 free positions there. So as the pace car comes down, having a look as the field is coming down to complete their warm-up lap, coming into turn number 1 now, this 90-degree, pretty flat left-hand corner. Be careful of the rumble strip on the inside, and that'll be interesting when cars are coming out of pit lane. Then this long straightaway down towards turn number 2, the keyhole. That 180-degree right-hander, pretty much double apex, but you don't really feel it that much. Just take it as a standard 180-degree corner. We'll see they're just coming into that now. Drew Mazzari bringing the field round turn number 2. Then I'll come down turn number 3. This is where they start the race in endurance racing and IndyCar racing. However, we're not able to do that today. We'll be starting at the start-finish line. So this gradual right-hand turn is known as turn number 3, before they'll bring it down into turn number 4 for China Beach Corner. And Doyle, one thing you did talk about is the undulation and the track changes throughout the lap. Some of these corners are pretty unsighted, and that's going to make it difficult for these drivers if they haven't done a lot of practice.
Yeah, that was the one thing, is I don't have a lot of experience on this track, but that was the first thing I noticed was ups and downs and kind of quick elevation changes and dips, literally dips in the track, as well as going uphill and downhill on the corners. So that's going to make for a lot of interesting racing, because if you're not good on the throttle and good on the braking, those elevation changes can definitely unsettle your car.
So here you see them come through the S's momentarily. Once again, we'll be going for 70 laps here today at Mid-Ohio. After they come out the S's, they'll do that right-hander into turn number 9, down towards Thunder Valley. I just love the names of some of these corners on American racetracks. Then bringing it into turn number 10. Be very careful of the wall on the right-hand side as you bring it into turn number 11, before the carousel, turn number 12, with that gentle left-hand flick coming onto the front straightaway. Pace car makes the turn down pit road, and Drew Mazzari will bring the field to green flag racing as round 5 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series is green.
Oh, big wreck coming off its first turn.
Having a look back, it does look as though we have a couple of cars involved in that already. Carson Borchers, Esteban Banal involved in that wreck. So, trouble at the start of this race immediately. And this is what I said, they normally start the races off turn number 2 in real life. And that is simply because turn 1 is so tight, it's not always possible for drivers to make it single file in time. But it looks like Andrew Aitken was involved in that mess as well, with Esteban Banal, and Carson Borchers, as I said, involved in it as well. Meanwhile, out front, Drew Mazzari is currently your race leader. Mark Fangman close behind him in 2nd position. Nico Brandt in 3rd. And then we'll be looking for, I believe it's Sean Stroud, who will then come up into the 4th position.
And how disappointing is that for Istvan Bilal being in the first incident there? That was the last road course that we had. He was your winner, so he was looking to repeat right there. So let's see if we got how much damage he's got.
Yeah, so Esteban Banal, who run the last time out at Mossport, the last road course that we raced, he is going to be hugely disappointed there, as we had a free car incident on lap number 1. Out front, Drew Mazzari, Mark Fangman and Nico Brandt separated by less than 1/2 of a second as they come down past the start-finish line, out of turn number 1. And tell you what, these 3 drivers are already pulling away Sean Stroud just able to keep onto the back of these top 3 drivers, but Alan Wilson already 6 seconds behind Sean Stroud in 5th. And we believe that Alan Wilson actually is our biggest mover at the start of this race. Started in 12th position, already up into the 5th spot. So whilst all the trouble is going on around him, he has managed to make up a ton of positions. UC Nimmerman, I believe, is currently sat in the 6th position. Carson Borch is in 7th. Dave Jinks is currently running in 8th, with Rene Murray in 9th and Jeffrey Kohlberg rounding out your top 10. Kohlberg just going a little bit wide there, being able to keep it on to the racetrack. Out front, as you complete lap number 2, Drew Mazzari is your race leader. Mark Fangman now dropped to 1.1 seconds behind. Nico Brandt currently in 2nd, coming under a little bit of pressure from Sean Stroud in 4th. Talk then.
Yeah, it looks like Juicy Neiman is trying to make a run on Alan Wilson. Not real close, but he's in the past he's proved he's got a little bit of car, so we'll see what happens there for that battle for 5th and 6th place.
And that's going to turn out to be a really interesting battle. Alan Wilson had a really good start there, being able to get his way through the field, but UC Nimmerman is going to be trying to close him down as quickly as possible in that battle for 5th position. Let's not forget, Carson Borchers is just sat there in the number 77 machine. He is only a second behind UC Nimmerman in the number 82 car. But then you've got yourself, again, another 4 seconds gap before you get to Dave Jinks, who's riding in 8th. But these top 4 drivers are completely driving away, Doyle.
Yeah, and they're keeping a little bit of gap between themselves because early in the race. I don't think anybody wants a repeat of turn 1 there, but I think all the drivers from 1 through 4 are definitely in the hunt as we're coming across here. And definitely Mark Fangman is got Dror in his sights. I don't believe he's going to let him get away.
Yeah, and strategy, tyre wear, track placement, that's all going to come into play in this race. We're only on lap 4 of 70 so far. And one of the things that was key last season is Nico Brandt didn't necessarily lead all the time, but his strategy options were the best out there by far. And that's what managed to make him win 6 out of the 8 races he entered. So for Nico Brandt, never ever discount him. I talk about him a lot on Saturday nights in the TFR Super Cup series, when he does exactly the same thing. Uses strategy and timing perfectly.
And you see right there, Sean Stroud is putting a lot of pressure on Nico Brandt right now. Just letting him know that he's there. He's definitely closing the gap on the corners. It looks like Sean's a little faster in than Nico right now, so we'll see what happens with that. It's funny how you see different drivers do different things. With some are good at going in fast, some come out fast, and that just helps with the dynamics of the race.
Currently looking at the 82 car of UC Nimmerman. That is a battle for part of the battle for 5th, 6th and 7th position on the racetrack with Alan Wilson and Carson Borchers. Mike Larson, to note, he has moved up from 14th just a couple of laps ago into the 11th position, charging down drivers all around him, is now up into the 10th spot. Sorry about that. So he's managed to gain himself 4 positions in as many laps. Mike Larson's on the charge. His next victim is going to be Rene Murray in the number 15 machine. But that battle between Alan Wilson, UC Nimmerman and Carson Borchers, that is really starting to hot up.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a little bit of a gap opening up between UC and Alan Wilson, and he's definitely getting a lot of pressure from Karsten. So I think that has, when you're driving in your mirror as opposed to in what's in front of you, that definitely can take some time and some of your concentration off the person in front of you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Whilst one of the biggest difference between road and oval racing is, on oval racing, all the fields so close together so much of the time, whereas on road racing, you've got to be racing not only the cars around you, but yourself. If you're pushing to 110% just to be able to keep the car on the racetrack and keep your position, your tyres are going to be wearing out a lot quicker. You're going to be a lot more prone to mistakes. See, Carson Borchers closing down really well into turn number 1. Just being gently on the throttle this early in the race. Didn't want to run into the back of UC. As UC goes wide, that's going to allow Borchers to get past
in the
him.
grass. Oh, look at that. That was a bad mistake by UC, so that's going to let the field go by. So we'll see if he's able to gather it back up and get back in there.
So UC Nimmerman, who came home second at Mossport just 2 weeks ago, is on the grass. He's going to lose 7th position to... he's going to lose 6th position to Carson Borchers, putting him down into the 7th spot. So he's going to see whether he can recover and try and catch those 2 drivers again.
Yeah, and it looks like he's going to make up some ground and get back in there. But at Mossport, it was interesting because he's one of those drivers that kind of got positioned almost just by pure survival. Now, if you remember, it was coming down to the last part of the laps, and Mark Warmington was closing on him.
Sorry, I need to interrupt you. Brian Simpson off the racetrack. Brian Simpson had a moment on the racetrack there. Just having a look back to see exactly what happened to him. But Brian Simpson spinning it wildly there. Looks like he's got himself all sorts of damage in that number 2 versus machine. So, not sure whether or not he'll be able to carry on. But a huge moment there for Brian Wilson, as I believe it was coming down into the keyhole in turn number 2. Just as the car, he put the power down, lost it as he came over one of the track seams. But he's managed to carry on by the look of it and get back on with his race.
An interesting part of this too, it looks like Istvan Below, who was involved in that first incident in turn 1, 51 seconds off the pace, but still charging again, is turning some really good lap time. So once again, we see Istvan, I guess, in the position that he loves most, which is the dark horse charging up to the front of the pack.
Yeah, let's not remember he did that perfectly at Daytona International Speedway's road course about 3 weeks ago. And there, as soon as he was on the back foot, he completely charged his way through the field. And he did a great job there. It'll be interesting to see how he comes through the field again. His next victim is going to be Giorgio Ponti in the 00 TNT racing machine. So it looks as though the gap's currently stood at 5 seconds, but I'm sure he's going to be closing that down mightily quickly.
And up front, too, I'm a little surprised that Dror in the number 46 car seems to have a pretty good gap on second place Nico Brandt, and then Mark Feynman and Sean Stroud seem to be battling out for second, third, and fourth, allowing Dror to kind of get some air between him and the rest of those cars. We'll see if that remains the case, but yeah, he's kind of pulling away there a little bit. I'm quite surprised by that.
The gap between Nico Brandt in second to Sean Stroud in fourth was less than a second as they came across the line last time by. Sean Stroud, on limited practice time, has managed to get himself into a really good position in this race. Mark Backmann currently running in third, Nico Brandt in second, but all 3 of them, they've dropped off to a considerable margin now from Joe Mazzari in that number 46 machine. And for Joe, it's just a case now he can just turn laps, control the pace as he needs to, and right now he's in the hot seat as we're completing lap number 8.
Back with this fun low again. He's definitely he's passing everything he can get. He can everything in sight. So he's definitely closing on everybody. He's definitely faster in the corners, and looks like he's going to make another pass right there. Didn't make it stick.
One thing that's going to be more difficult for him than at Daytona is how this track is a lot more difficult for passing opportunities. There's only really 3 defined points on the racetrack where you can make a move. Into turn number 1. Sorry, not into turn number 1, into turn number 2 in towards the keyhole, into turn 4 they're trying to bend, and then into the carousel at the end of the lap. Apart from that, it is pretty much single file for the most part, unless you really are committed into making an overtaking manoeuvre. And it does look as though, you see the car there, I believe that's Brian Simpson coming down pit lane. Sorry,
that's interesting.
Take that back, that's Rene Murray. Rene Murray is coming down pit lane, so he's going to come in. It does look as though he has got a bit of rear wing damage. So he's going to be trying to get that fixed.
Yeah, he just kind of moved out of the way for Istvan there. So Istvan picks up another position, and he's being followed closely. Giorgio Ponte. So now that he's got some clean air, it's going to be interesting to see if Istvan has enough car, to get up and get the next contender. It looks like he's going to be hunting down John Ailes. Yeah,
John Ailes currently sat in 11th, will be his next victim. The gap was about 8 seconds last time by. With then Randy Crosno just a couple of seconds ahead of John Ailes in 10th position at the moment. Meanwhile, you have UC Nimmerman hunting down the battle for 6th position. That is currently being held by Alan Wilson, who was a hard charger of the race at the start. Managed to get his way from literally the back of the pack at the start of the race. He started this race in 11th. Managing to get him all the way up into the 6th position. Great job by him. but now he's come under severe pressure from that number 82 machine.
Well, yeah, and as we saw earlier, it was a three-way battle, but Karsten Borcher seems to have really pulled away from the other two in the pack, probably because they're spending a lot of time battling. So it's going to be interesting to see whether UC can actually get by Alan Wilson or not, because Alan Wilson's definitely not giving it up easy.
The gap up front, stabilising now about 2 seconds. Nico Brandt currently sat in second position. He did overtake Mark Fangman for that
Alan
second
Wilson
spot.
is off the track. Oh, bad mistake. Totally ruined his car into the wall.
And that's what I was saying earlier. You've got to be very careful on that right-hand side tyre barrier. It does look as though he's being able to keep it on, but he's coming down pit lane early to get himself some fresh tyres. And Sean Stroud is out of the race. Sean Stroud in the number 21 machine, out of the race. Having a look back to see if there's anything important that caused him to crash. But it literally did look as though he came down pit lane and his day is done.
Oh, that's unfortunate for Sean, because as much practice and time he's put in the track, it was really impressive to see him running up front like that. That's really sad to see him make a mistake that's going to end his day.
As I said, I don't believe he actually made that much mistake. He just brought his car down pit lane. Whether or not he had other obligations that he had to attend to. But disappointing for Sean, because he was really sticking there with Drew Mazzari, Nico Brandt and Mark Fangman. So to run through your top 5, Drew Mazzari is still your race leader. The gap is closing. Nico Brandt now down to 1.3 seconds behind. Mark Fangman currently sat in third, a further 1.5 seconds behind. Nico Brandt in second. Karsten Borchers is in fourth, and UC Nimmerman rounds out your top 5. As we're currently working lap 12 of 70 of round 5 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series on Glacier TV. Will Vincent and Doyle Johnson in the booth.
And it looks like that incident in the tire barriers with Mr. Wilson there has kind of opened up the door for Mike Larson, who's closing on UC Nimmerman, who is currently in the 5th place. And Mike Larson's moved all the way up to 6th place, and he's closing on UC. So he's pretty hungry at this point. We'll see if he can overtake him later in the race.
Yeah, and it does look as though the field is all over the place at the moment. Going to keep an eye out on Esteban Badal. He is closed down now. John Ailes, Dave Jinks, and Randy Crosno. So expect Esteban Badal to really start charging over the next couple of laps in that number 22 machine.
And the type of racers we're looking at there, Randy and David Jinks, I would not be surprised if you see them do the gentlemanly thing when they see Esteban in the rearview mirror and let him by, because they know he's considerably faster. But we'll see. Those two guys are some very, very courteous racers.
Yeah, you see Esteban Badal now coming up on Dave Jinks. This is the battle for 8th position. Dave Jinks in the West USA car. Does look as though Badal has, for the moment, got the speed to close right up to the back of him as they come through the S's. Bringing it down Thunder Valley. You see there, just as you were talking about, moving off the racing line, allowing Badal to have the position. No point in fighting him when you know that he's so much faster. Beautiful, courteous manoeuvre there by Dave Jinks in number 76.
And I would expect we're going to see something similar to that from Randy Crosno. Dave Jinks has always been a class act, a very courteous racer, so he'll race you as long as, but if he knows you're way faster, he's just going to avoid the crash and let you go.
So the next victim is Randy Crosno in the number 4 AeroX racing machine, getting a little bit wide to come through the keyhole. Yep. This is going to give Badal the opportunity he needs to close right onto the back of him. As you see there, Randy Crosno moving again to the right-hand side as they come through turn number 3. Badal is going to easily get the job done there. Courteous once again from Randy Crosno, and now Badal is up into the 7th spot. But I'll tell you what, he's got himself a 15-second gap to close, and Mike Larson in 6th position. That is going to be interesting to watch the time difference between those two drivers.
Stranger things have happened, though. Isfan somehow finds that extra burst of speed on the track whenever he's in the chase. It's kind of interesting how he seems to be motivated by being behind. So we'll see if he can pull off a miracle here.
And in the battle for the lead, Nico Brandt has really started to catch down Drew Mazzari in the number 46 machine. The gap is down to less than 1 second as they're coming up amongst lap traffic at the same time. This is going to be really interesting. They have got Alan Wilson and Dave Jinks battling for position on the racetrack. Dave Jinks moved to the left-hand side to let all three of them, by the look of it, go past. So Dave Jinks easily lets these guys pass. Alan Wilson now is going to be the next driver that Joni Mazzari looks to lap, getting out of the way for both drivers. But it does look as though Nico Brandt, not by design, is just going to held up ever so slightly through the keyhole. This is going to allow Joni Mazzari a little bit of breathing space. But I tell you what, Nico Brandt is starting to come alive in this race.
But as you mentioned earlier, that's kind of Nico's strength, is not necessarily always the fastest guy on the track, but his strategy, the way he plays out the race and the way he runs his race often finds him up front when the checkers fly. So we can't count that out, that he's stalking Dror more than being led by Dror.
And Mark Fangman currently sat in the third position. He is 3 seconds off the race lead. Don't count Fangman out by any way, shape or form either. Perhaps Fangman is on a slightly different strategy to conserving his tyres on the early stage of this race, as he now navigated that traffic of Alan Wilson in the number 8 DH machine. But I tell you what, these three drivers are still driving away completely from the field. Carson Borch is in fourth, 29 seconds off the race lead.
Yeah, you definitely can't count out any of these drivers right here in the top three. As Mark Fangman, I believe, he's keeping him in sight. So as long as they haven't closed the gap out to where he can't get to him, I have a feeling you're right. This is more of a strategy play right now. As we are in lap 16, so they're looking to do some to save some tires and possibly even save some fuel and get a short pit stop.
Joni Mazzari is going to be held up a little bit by Randy Cosno there in the number 4 machine.
Ooh,
gets past him nicely. Now it's going to be interesting to see where Nico Brandt manages to catch him. Does look as though Nico is going to have a much easier time of getting past Randy Cosno, as Joni Mazzari did. But that gap is still only about a second as they come down to complete then the final third of lap 16 of 70 at the moment. Mark Fangman is going to be looking to see whether he can get past Randy Cosno as they go through the carousel, looking to the high side, very close there. Literally dived to the outside at the last second. Good car control there by Mark Fangman. Does look as though the field spread out a little bit in the mid-pack. Carson Borchers has got himself a 12-second lead over UC Ninman. That is in 4th and 5th position. Mike Larson is 8 seconds behind UC Ninman at the moment. But having a look through his lap times, it does look as though he's not doing that bad a job, is Mike Larson, closing him down by about half a second to a second a lap. Isman Bala, however, we talked about this a moment ago, his last 2 laps are identical, 1 minute 11.073. He is one of the fastest guys on the racetrack at the moment.
Yeah, he's also the last one on the lead lap, so he's kind of holding on to that. I'd be surprised if you see any. He will probably remain in that position, as I do not believe you're going to see Dror, Nico, or Mark Fangman be lapping Isfan Bilal. I don't think he's going to allow that. So he'll be driving as hard as he can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on the lap times. Does look as though at the moment, Isfan Bilal is the fastest guy on the racetrack. He's 1 minute and 4 seconds with a little bit of change behind the race leader. So that'll be interesting to see whether or not Bilal is going to be able to narrow that gap back to avoid the possibility of him getting lapped later on.
Well, as long as he doesn't make any mistakes and he continues to drive like he's driving now, I think he's just going to slowly pick away at it. Like it's only lap 17 of 70, so he has plenty of time. And then we also have 1 to 2 pit stops that are going to make a difference. So we don't know what's going to happen, how things are going to round out when that happens. So he can take advantage of that several times during the race.
Yeah, the pit window here, we haven't talked about it, is very varied. Drivers can do either a 2 or a 3-stop strategy. Not much time difference between them, so it'll be a case of how much you use your tyres. If you use them more, perhaps a 3-stop strategy will be better with less fuel. But if you think that you've got the ability to preserve your tyres, track placement, and a 2-stop strategy could work out to be slightly better.
And that's gonna be interesting to see who does what here, and as the field kind of stretches out there, and people, you know, that pit cycle is really going to be really important in the strategy. And I think Isfan is really looking forward to getting a quick and clean pit stop so we can make up some time. In the meantime, we see Mike Larson really gaining on UC Niemann there. So I'm expecting probably in the next 2 laps we're going to see Mike Larson bumper to bumper or wing to wing, as it were, with Juicy, and let's see what happens.
But as you say, that Esteban Balao is almost 2 seconds a lap faster than Mike Larson. So literally at the same time that Mike Larson's going to catch Juicy Niemann, Esteban Balao is going to be right there looking to close down Mike Larson. So 5th, 6th and 7th position on the racetrack. That battle is going to get interesting very quickly. Out front, Nico Brand, as soon as they get into clean air, the two of them, Nico Brand clearly is the fastest car on the racetrack at the moment. The gap at the line last time by is 7/10 of a second. As you see, Jordan Mazzari there just bringing up a little bit of a dirt trail as they came through the carousel. Be interesting to see what the gap is this time as they come past the start-finish line. Looks a lot closer, possibly less than half a second, and 57/100ths of a second there. So Nico Brandt really is hunting down draw in that number 46 car.
Well, and for Istvan too, there's on the straights here, he's probably feeling a lot of pressure, because I actually think he can see Dror coming up on him, or at least feeling him, and trying to keep from being lapped. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. So he's got the pressure of trying to catch Mike Larson, but he's also got the pressure of somebody coming up behind him.
Yeah, it does look as though Esteban Balao is about 7 seconds off being put a lap down here at Mid-Ohio. And I'll tell you what could be really interesting is, judging by my maths, all 3 situations that we talked about, Larson catching Nimmerman, Balao catching Larson, and then Mazzari catching Balao, that could all happen within the space of 2 laps of each other.
Like also is out of the race. Looks like Renee Murray is off the track and mowing the lawn there. I don't know what happened to Renee.
Having a look back at Randy Cosner, it looked as though on the approach to Thunder Valley, on the approach into Thunder Valley, turn number 9, just clipping the white line while onto the racetrack. Is back on the racetrack though, but his last lap, or 1 minute, so last lap for him.
Well, that's unfortunate for Randy, because he's one of the classy racers out here, and it's always bad when you see somebody like that who may not be the fastest racer on the track, but is very courteous, and you know, he's out there giving it all week after week, trying to improve. So it looked like he might have repairable damage, but we'll see.
Yeah, fun fact about Rennie Murray, he actually was a driver who partook in more Afterburn IndyCar Series races in 2011 than anyone else, with the exception of Dave Jinks. So between those 2 drivers, they were the most heavily contested drivers in the Afterburn IndyCar Series. Meanwhile, as you saw there, Draw Mazzari, Nico Brandt managing to get past Renee Murray there, who has got himself some form of car trouble. He was very loose as he came out of the carousel onto the front straightaway. So we'll keep an eye on his lap times. He is currently circulating about 6 seconds off the racing pace at the moment, but still, as he goes through the keyhole, it does look as though he's able to keep his car under control.
It's kind of amazing here. I think Istvan actually may be in a little bit of trouble of being lapped here, which really surprises me.
I'm having a look back at the last laps. Esteban Balao in 1 minute 11.5, and and Nico Brand. Sorry, I have to interrupt there. Draw Mazzari lost the lead of the race in the keyhole. I believe you did see it on your TV screens just a moment ago, coming through the keyhole, just getting it a little bit wide. That gave the lead to Nico Brandt. So Nico Brandt is now about 8/10 of a second ahead of Draw Mazzari. And I was just saying that it looked as though Nico Brandt's lap times were about 6/10 of a second faster than Esteban Balao, so he's really under severe pressure. But Nico Brandt is now your race leader.
Indeed he is, and he's closing on Istvan Balao. And of course you got now Dror, now he's under pressure. He's got a reason to drive now too, so he, you know, losing your lead like that, he's definitely going to want to hunt Nico down, but Nico's like he's got clean air, is gone.
Approaching
We'll
the
see what happens.
Approaching the 1/3 distance here at Mid-Ohio Sports Course, round 5 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series on Glacier TV. Nico Brand is your new race leader. Our first major lead change of the day, taking that position from Drew Mazzari as he went wide in the keyhole just 1 lap ago. Mark Fangman currently sat in the 3rd position, about 4.5 seconds behind the race leader Nico Brand, with Carson Borcher sat in 4th, Jussi Nimmerman in 5th, Mike Larson, Istvan Balau, Alan Wilson, Andrew Aitken and Dave Jinks rounding out your top 10.
And I've been watching Istvan there. He seems to be losing a little concentration. He's been in the grass and sliding around the corners a little bit. So I think he's feeling a lot of pressure from behind him not to become one of the lap cars. He needs to kind of calm it down and run his race.
Yeah, Istvan Balau definitely under pressure here at Mid-Ohio. That is going to make things very difficult for him. I mean, to be fair, on a road course, it doesn't really matter if you go down a lap or not. It's not as if you're going to get really a full course caution. I believe there's only ever been 2 full course cautions ever called in the series on a road course. But at the same time, it's a bit of pride, I think, for Istvan. You know, he clearly is a driver worthy of a top 5 finish. But, yet again, he's had bad luck and he's having to drive his heart out to get through the field.
Yeah, and I think something we talked about before, we're expecting Mark Larson to close up on Jussi Nimmerman, but it seems that Istvan Balau is actually the one that's going to be closing on Mike Larson first. Mike is not making up as much time as he was earlier on in the race, so now he's feeling pressure from Istvan, so that's probably going to change his race strategy a little bit too.
So now Nico Brand is in the race lead. His gap to Drew Mazzari 2.7 seconds as he is catching Carson Borchers to put him 1 lap down. Need to take that back. I believe that is, yes, so it is Carson Borchers to put him 1 lap down. Carson Borchers had a bit of a moment, but Mark Fangman is closing down on Drew Mazzari in that battle for 2nd position. I think that now Drew Mazzari's lost the lead. He's lost a little bit of confrontation and confidence. Maybe his tyres are going away a little bit. Going wide in the keyhole is a classic example of how you're losing front tyre wear. What I'm trying to say. He's losing his front tyres. I'm going to say that right the 3rd time. But it does look as though Mark Fangman is starting to close down Drew Mazzari on the last part of this first fuel run.
Yes, you've got that going on, and Istvan is closing on Mike Larson at a remarkable pace. You probably have 2 laps before he's around him, so that's not helping Mike Larson's confidence anymore. He was gaining on the nearest competitor, which was Jussi Nimmerman, but there's a whole slew of cars up in front. But
sorry, Nico Brand is down in pit lane. Nico Brand, sorry, I need to turn top here. Nico Brand is down his pit lane as we are completing our first cycle of pit stops here at Mid-Ohio. Nico Brand is down into pit lane. Having a look now, he's seeing where he is as he comes back out onto the racetrack. Nice exit there for Nico. I believe that Carson Borchers, John Ailes and Andrew Aitken have also had their first service of the day, or so first scheduled service. But Nico Brand, first driver down into pit lane, having a look to see where Drew Mazzari and Mark Fangman are when they come down onto pit road, which should be in a couple of laps time.
Well, and you talked about Nico Brand and his strategy being the first one of the leaders down on pit road. We'll see if how many more laps Mark Fangman and Drew managed to stay out and maintain position.
As Drew Mazzari down in pit lane, Mark Fangman stays out. I believe there's a couple of cars. Mike Larson down in pit lane, Jussi Nimmerman into pit lane. So there's another car coming out of pit lane at the moment. That is Dave Jinks. So most drivers are in the sequence of their first pit stop of the day. Most drivers electing to take that 2-stop strategy I was talking about. The 3-stop strategy is possible, but you have to make sure that you're a lot faster on the racetrack to be able to make it work. So we'll be looking now for Mark Fangman to see how many laps he can stay out longer, to see whether he can close down that gap to Brandt and Mazzari.
And it looks like Rand Krauss managed to get his car fixed, and he's back out on the racetrack. Of course, he's a couple laps down, but he's back in the race and turning laps. So I'm glad to hear that his pit crew was able to get his car back out on the road.
So car on the wall, Randy Croslow almost came all the way across the racetrack into Mark Fangman there. A heart-stopping moment for Fangman, but Randy Croslow into the wall. That is going to pretty much put pay to his day in the number 4 machine on cold tyres, though. We haven't managed to talk about this much yet, but cold tyres for those first couple of laps, you have to be oh so careful to make sure that you don't just chuck it into the wall until your tyre pressures come up to temperature a bit.
Yeah, and I'll have to apologize to Randy because he obviously fell victim to the curse of the announcer, just talking about him, and there he goes. So I apologize, Randy. I'll try not to talk about you anymore.
And I'm sure we'll get Randy up into the booth in a couple of minutes' time to have a quick chat with him. Doyle, off you go and Scarpa, see if you can try and find him. But Mark Fangman is technically your race leader from Nico Brown. The gap on paper is 21 seconds, but we're having a look to see just when Mark Fangman decides to bring it down into pit lane. And Doyle, I have to ask you, how many laps do you think it is going to be until Fangman actually makes that drive into pit lane to make his first service?
I can't imagine it's going to be much longer, either this lap or the next, because his tires have to be wearing, and although we know he was kind of laying back there and probably trying to save some fuel, but it's time to pit here. So I'm anticipating within the next 2 laps at most.
And we're going to bring Randy Croslow into the booth. Randy, we saw there your moment, second moment of the day, hitting the wall as you came through Thunder Valley. Thunder Valley, that turn 9, turn 10 complex, hasn't been your best friend today.
No, you're right, Will. I left it there twice. My hat's off to these road racers. That's a lot of fun running that track, but to really nail the laps the way they're lapping and the times they're doing, that's phenomenal control that these guys have. So I was just kind of trying to stay out of the way and just, log some laps in the road section of this race, and it was a lot of fun.
And just how difficult is that turn 9, 10, and 11 complex? Because you've got a little bit of elevation change. The car always wants to get a little bit squirrely. Just how difficult is it to keep it under control?
Well, obviously, Will, it's a lot more difficult for me than it is the regular road racing guys. But yeah, it almost feels like when you crest the hill, you lose control. And I know that's where I've been losing the most time, lap after lap. And you just try and push it a little too far like I did, and bingo, you find out how hard that wall can actually be.
And I'll come back to you in a moment, Randy. Mark Fangman is down to pit lane for his first service of the day. So the couple of people that were saying that he might be able to do a one-stop strategy, unfortunately that's not going to work out for him, but he has been able to stay out a good 4 laps longer than anyone else. That is going to equate to later on about 2 seconds in pit lane over the course of this race. So Mark Fangman coming back out onto the racetrack now. It does look as though he has fallen in back behind Drew Mazzari and Nico Brandt, so he retains his 3rd position, but don't count him out for later on in the race, because if he's been able to stay out this much later now, he might be able to make the undercut as this race continues to unfold.
Yeah, and Randy, bringing you up in here, and as I said in the broadcast, I have to apologize because I have to take full responsibility for that last incident you were in, because we were just talking about you in the booth, and it seems like you fell victim to the curse of the announcer there, so I have to apologize.
That's okay, Doyle. Just don't let it happen again.
I'll try not to talk about you anymore.
Mark Fangman almost had a moment yet again on cold tyres. And Randy White is still here with us for the moment. Cold tyres, it did seem to be, was your unfolding after your green flag pit stop. Just how much more difficult is that car to control in those first couple of laps after you get yourself fresh rubber? And do you lose concentration at all, when you have the moment to chill out in pit lane as you're getting your service done? Does that snap your concentration brake at all?
No, not really. For someone like me who a little bit slower than the rest of the field, when I'm in the pit stop, I'm looking at that relative screen, because I do not want to come out in front of the leaders and create a fiasco up front. So I'm kind of focused in that regard. But yeah, once you get out on the track, you know, your normal rhythm that you've been going for so many laps is different on the first lap or two. And so you kind of dance and skate around a little bit. But again, I think the road race regulars, they, you know, that's second nature to them, and it's just something that I need to learn that I'll get with seat time.
And final question, I'm going to put you on the spot. Nico Brandt, Joe Mazzario, or Mark Fangman, who's going to be your race winner?
Nico Brandt.
10-4. Well, I'll let you go back to your teammates. Commiserations for your race, but we'll see you next week out at Watkins Glen, and I'm sure you're looking forward to that.
Thank you very much, Will, and congratulations to you putting this together with Glacier TV. This is a great broadcast that you guys have going, so kudos to all of you.
Well, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your race, Randy.
And while we were talking to Randy, one of the people that we've been keeping an eye on, Van Below, is now in fourth place, only 36 seconds off the lead.
So I need to interrupt. Nico Brandt is out of the race. Nico Brandt is out of the race. Coming down into turn number 1, getting collected there by Dave Jinks, just like he did at Road America last season when he was collected by a spinning back marker. Nico Brandt's race is over, losing it into turn number 1, being collected by Dave Jinks. Terrifying there from Nico Brandt, and a huge disappointment.
Oh, that was a horrific crash too, coming off. Oh my gosh, yeah. He was spinning in the turn, there was nothing he could do, and he went completely off into the wall, upside down. Oh, that car is trash.
There is absolutely nothing else that Nico Brandt could do there. Pretty much is single groove all the way through turn. I'm having a look back to see how it was from Dave Jinks' angle, and seeing whether there's anything Dave Jinks could have done differently. But in all reality, having a look at it, it did look as though Dave Jinks, coming into the corner, just lost the car on the apex, and as he was spinning it around was when Nico Brandt collected him. So for Dave, it almost as though he didn't really have the opportunity to, you know, do anything differently himself. So just tough luck there for both drivers.
No, he was just trying to hold on to his car. I mean, he cut loose, and you know, it was definitely, and he was obviously 3 lanes wide there at one point in time as he was straddled across the track, and there was nothing that Nico could do. And then right behind him, you had Giorgio Ponte, who also had a little piece of Dave Jinks in there, but at least he was able to stay on the track. Oh, that's just heartbreaking for both Dave Jinks and Nico Brandt.
So that is going to change the complete complexity of this race. Nico Brandt, who's looking for that first place to really step up his charge to Mark Fangman in the Road Course Championship, now is going to be sitting the rest of this race out on the sidelines, and that means that Doyle Mazzari once again is your race leader. Mark Backmann in second, and is stabilising that gap at about 3 seconds, with Cartridge and Borches in third, Esteban Balau in fourth, and I believe that UC Ninman will round out your top 5.
Yeah, that's just unfortunate. It's you know, Dave Jinks, this is the second, you know, situation we've had in some races between Nico Brandt and Dave Jinks, and hopefully the name Jinks isn't working against Nico Brandt. They can work that out, because that's a shame.
And Mike Larson also having a moment. It's that mid-race crazy session. Mike Larson spinning it on the exit. Once again, turn number 9, down in towards Thunder Valley. Didn't really manage to hit anything, but Mike Larson lost himself a good 8-9 seconds there, losing a position to John Ailes. Well, not losing a position, sorry, and being overtaken by John Ailes on the racetrack, even though John Ailes is 1 lap down. It does look as though it is that mid-race craziness yet again, Doyle. And is that the fatigue starting to kick in? I mean, these races are considerably longer than what you have in the iRacing official series. So is that the fatigue kicking in? Maybe concentration through the pit stop sequence?
No, I think so. I mean, we're lap 35. I'm looking at Mark Fangman right now, who's managed to take over second position from Carson Borchers. But if you're not used to running 35 laps in a race, and we've got to get, you know, we're just a little over halfway now. So, you know, it does matter if you've not if you don't have that stamina or used to sitting for this long a period of time in your car, your eyes are going to go blurry because you are staring at a computer screen. So, it's going to make a difference. Definitely losing concentration for some of these drivers.
And let's not forget, for a lot of these drivers as well, these long races are good preparation for them, as we're under 2 months away now from the biggest race in the iRacing calendar for the IndyCars, the Indy 500, which will be live, of course, on Glacier TV, as well as the entirety of the World Tour 2012. But these races, stamina, mental preparation, that's all going to come in useful as we approach the month of May.
Yeah, and I think some of these road drivers, there's several world events that you see some of these guys, especially these top drivers up here, they participate in almost all those world events, so they've got a little more practice, a little more seat time for the longer races. And that may, begin to pay off here.
So Drew Mazzari is still your leader. The gap is just under 2 seconds now to Mark Fangman. Mark Fangman starting to smell that race lead. Now that Nico Brandt is out of the race, Carson Borch is in third, Istvan Badal in fourth, Justin Ninnemann in fifth, and Mike Larson is in sixth. With Alan Wilson, Andrew Aitken, Jorge Ponte, and John Ailes rounding out your top 10. And it does look as though, Doyle, Mark Fangman really is starting to close down.
Yeah, like we said before, I think he was stalking more than anything else, and I think he's settled in. He knows the track now. He's used to his car, and he's got the setup dialed in. So, and we know Mark Fangman can turn some pretty wicked laps. So, I think this is exactly what we're seeing. Is he's just basically stalking Dror. Because remember, we still have another pit sequence to go, and Mark Fangman stayed out longer. So, during that pit sequence, he could possibly have more fuel in the tank, which means a shorter pit. So, that could work to his advantage for sure.
We'll open it up to our followers on Twitter. Tweet us, don't text us, tweet us who you think is going to come out on top, Drew Mazzari or Mark Fangman. Use the hashtag GlacierTV, and we will let people know your opinions as this race progresses. But I'll tell you what, these two are going tete-a-tete, literally, in the middle stage of this race. And let's not forget, though, Istvan Badal is now up to 4th position and still is on the lead lap.
Yeah, that's interesting how that played out for Istvan, because it looked like at one point in time when Nico was chasing him down, it looks like he was going to go, fall victim to the leaders there, but that did not happen. Pit stops and other things taking place, and he managed to hang on. So that's kind of amazing, as we've seen Istvan do before. Again, just kind of pull a rabbit out of the hat, since he was involved in that crash at the very beginning of the race. You wouldn't even know it by what's going on now in the race. He's up to fourth position, looking pretty comfortable. Definitely closing the gap on Carson Borchers, so I'm expecting to see him in 3rd place before too long.
So yeah, it does really look as though this battle for the lead is really starting to hot up. Let's not forget, though, that Istvan Badal still has the opportunity to go all the way up into the 3rd position. Carson Borchers will be his next victim, shall we say, in the number 77 machine. Carson Borchers doing a really good job, yet again, in that 77 car. He was involved in an incident earlier on in the race as well. Managed to recover, get himself up into that 3rd spot for the moment. To run through our retirements very quickly, Jeffrey Kohlberger, Brian Simpson, Sean Stroud, Randy Crosno are all out of the race. Dave Jinks is multiple laps down, but Nico Brandt is also out of the race. And as we come past the start-finish line, in just a matter of seconds, we're going to go on board with Mark Fangman for lap 39 of 70 here on Glacier TV, and we'll talk you through the lap as well as they come down past the start-finish line, and they'll be bringing it in that 90-degree left-hander I was talking about into turn number 1. Very difficult corner there. You have to be really careful on the apex that the car doesn't swing loose on you, and then you should bring it all the way up down the long back straightaway through the keyhole.
And you notice that elevation change right there, Will, how you kind of go up and then back down again, which is something that really can destabilize the car.
Oh yeah, you have to really think about a lot of variables when you're setting up a car for this racetrack. Now you bring it through the King through turn number 3 into the China Beach for turn number 4, then sweeping it left for turn 5, then another right-hander for turn 6 as you go into the S's. Mark Fangman has traffic ahead of him. That is Rene Murray, and ahead of him who is going to be able to clear now as they come into turn number 9 onto Thunder Valley, as they'll do the right-hand kink, as you see there, Fangman just getting right on the right-hand side. Right-hand kink now into turn number 11, then the carousel, which always seems to be called a name of a corner on so many American racetracks. Bring it through that left-hand flick into turn number 13 to complete yet another lap, and that was lap 39 of 40 here at round 5 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series at Mid-Ohio Sports Course.
Yeah, and if we're looking at the race car from the angle, if one of the things you'll notice is how fast they're braking and going through the gears. They're literally going from 5th to 2nd gear to 1st gear in just a split second. There's a lot of mechanics going on this racetrack to get up to speed and then back down into a braking zone where they're going a lot slower in a short period of time. And that's kind of there's a lot why these courses and why this particular car is so technical.
Yeah, and one of the things that is very lucky on these Indy cars is the way the gearbox works. You can literally just bash down the gears as quickly as possible, not have to worry about going down a gear too many and blowing up your engine. But Mark Backmann now is right on the rear of Drew Mazzari in that number 46 machine as they come through Thunder Valley in towards the carousel yet again. We'll have 30 laps to go at the start-finish line, and this is Mark Backmann really making his charge as they come through turn number 13. The gap is down to less than half a second, sorry, 6/10 of a second now, as they bring it through turn number 1. Mark Backmann is on a charge.
If you look, as you can see through the camera there, looking from the back of the leader, now you know what he sees in his rearview mirror, and it's pretty scary when you see a car coming up on you like that. The way he's closing on turns, I think Dror knows that Mark's going to be knocking on the door there any moment.
I'll tell you what, though, I've always had an issue. I hate mirror driving. I hate it. If I see a car in my mirrors, I try to blank him out as much as possible, because the last thing you want to do, as you see Mazzari getting a little bit sideways as they come through China Beach, the last thing you want to do is, start driving a defensive line too early, putting your tyres out. You see Mazzari sideways all over the place.
Like I said, he sees him in the mirror. You feel that pressure. Now he's starting to make mistakes.
So Mark Fangman can smell blood now, earn that number 46 car or Drew Mazzari, but I hate it when I have to mirror drive. You always need to drive a lot faster when you're just driving your normal racing line and almost blanking out the world around you and just driving to your lap deltas.
And that is absolutely true, Will, but in a situation like this, I think it's just human nature that unless you bust those mirrors off and don't have them on the car at all, in the situation that Drew Mazzari is in, he's going to notice that he's back there.
I'm sure in-car race control would have an issue if you got rid of the wing mirrors, but I'll be talking to my pit crew especially. The battle for third position, it does look as though Carson Borchers has got the legs for Esteban Balao at the moment. That is the battle for third and fourth position. It's down to 19 seconds, that gap between Borchers and Balao, but Balao's not really closing that gap the same way we saw him sive his way through the field early on in this race. So there is still a possibility that Borchers might be able to hold on to that third position.
Yeah, and that's Carson Borchers is someone we haven't talked about too much. He wasn't really a big factor in the other road races that we've run, but he's definitely running an impressive race today. Being able to hold off Istvan Below, who we know is the hard charger of the world, so it's actually pretty impressive. He's running a really good race today.
And it's just as you were about to interrupt yourself, I was about to do so as well. Mazzari is getting very scrappy as he's trying to gap Fangman in any way, shape or form, but Fangman is just right there, turning consistent laps, and traffic is going to come into play in probably about a lap and a half's time yet again. That will be Alan Wilson. He's going to go a further lap down. That will put himself down to 2 laps down. But for Mazzari, he really just needs to take a big, deep breath and just calm himself down a little bit, because it does look as though he's starting to make a couple of reckless mistakes.
Yeah, I think Mark Fangman is definitely in Dror Mazzari's head right now. I mean, he's basically got on the long black trench coat, and I actually think that Dror is where Mark wants him. I think he's waiting for that next pit cycle, and he's just going to ride behind here, keep him in striking distance, Now, whether that'll work or not by the end of the race, I don't know, but I think he's definitely got something for Dror somewhere along the line here.
And one of the things we haven't yet talked about in this race is see Joel Mazzara just dummying down to the inside, letting Wilson know, hello, I'm here, I want to get past. One of the things we haven't talked about is see Wilson moving to the right-hand side now to let both those drivers pass, is how you just don't have the time to breathe at this racetrack. At Mossport, you had some very long straightaways. At Daytona, you have, the magical 31 degrees of banking. Here, even when you're going flat out, you have to tilt it to the right, tilt it to the left, or whatever. Always have to be on thinking. So these drivers, on what is only a 1 minute, 11-second lap, haven't got the chance to, really relax at all.
Well, no, absolutely not. And when you compare it to oval driving, it's pretty obvious the differences. But, I mean, here you're thinking about everything. What is this turn? Is it a right? Is it a left? Where do I brake? How much, where do I shift? All these things have to happen and come together kind of orchestrated. Otherwise, you're off the track or you're losing time. So this is an extremely difficult track to run, as it doesn't give you a lot of those long straightaways that we have in some of the other tracks. You've got a couple, but it's just turn after turn after turn, all different angles, plus the elevation changes we talked about. So it's extremely technical.
And let's not forget as well for Mark Backmann, whilst he's closing down, he doesn't want to push his tyres too hard. He wants to push Mazzara into making a mistake, but at the same time, push too hard and you're not going to have the tyres to make the move when the opportunity presents itself. But running through your top five, Joel Mazzara is your race leader, Mark Backmann in second, Carson Borches in third, Istvan Balogh in fourth, Justin Lindman in fifth. We talk about these two drivers mainly at the moment because they is the best battle on the racetrack. Mike Larson currently sat in sixth, Andrew Aitken in seventh, Alan Wilson in eighth, Giorgio Ponti in ninth, John Ailes in 10th. Pretty much all running time races at the moment, trying to hunt down the car ahead of them and keep some form of a gap to the car behind. But Istvan Balogh is still charging down, but that gap is still only about 19 seconds between the two of them. So he's not really making that much headway into Carson Borches in that 77 machine.
And now it's kind of hard to check the field because you've got cars on the lead lap, cars 1 lap down, mixed in with cars that are 2 laps down, as many as 7 laps down. So, you're racing against all kinds of cars that you're really not racing against. So that adds another, complexity to the race.
But Mazzara does look as though he's being able to hold his own for the moment, as Mark Backmann just there, and Mazzara putting a lap on Dave Jinks once again. Dave Jinks, I'm sure, will just be diving out the way as soon as he sees his leaders come through. Doesn't want the same incident as happened to Nico Brandt earlier, which I have to say surely was just human error there. Nothing that either driver could do any differently, but if Nico Brandt was still in this race, this would be a really interesting three-way battle.
Yeah, I'm still very disappointed that happened. That, like you said, there was nothing anybody could do. Pure racing incident, and that's too bad because this is now a two-way battle that was once a three-way battle. So But as far as this Mark Backmann, I really think he's toying with Dror. I mean, Dror's a great driver, and he's made a lot of mistakes. And Mark Backmann, you see, he'll get up to him and he'll back off a little bit. I don't think he's ready to make a pass yet. I think he wants to wait till it'll stick.
And, as I said earlier, let's not forget that he went 4 laps longer on the first stint. Now, I've done the maths, and that equates to anywhere between 1.5 and 2 seconds in pit lane. So, if Backmann can be there or thereabouts now, he has the opportunity to do the famous Formula 1 undercut when Mazzara is going to have to come down pit lane first.
And I think that may be where he's looking for that gap to close up. If he can stay close enough, he can come out possibly in the lead and put enough room between him and Dror to hopefully hold it up for the rest of the race.
So, I mean, Doyle, I'm going to ask you the very quick question. Who do you think out of those two is going to take the twin checkers at the end of this race?
Well, I really think it's going to be Mark Fangman and Les Strohr and Mark take each other out, and then it's going to be Karsten Borchers.
But you don't think that Ballard is going to have the chance to really close down Borchers at all?
He is. If they continue to run like they will, they will close it down. So there's plenty of race left. We're only on lap 48, but he's not closing as much as he was earlier. So it's interesting to see whether he's just fallen off or he's taking it easy.
Yeah, Karsten Borchers is 49 seconds behind the race leader. The gap is, I have to say, put down to 16 seconds now between himself and Esteban Ballard. So it is closing, but just not at the rate we thought it would. And as Mazzari and Fangman come down to put a lap on Borchers. That isn't Borchers there, surely not. Yeah, sorry, it's put a lap on Borchers. That is going to make things a bit more difficult for Borchers. He's going to lose a couple more seconds here and there as well.
And we see Istvan Below is now scored in third place, and Karsten Borchers is in fourth. So somewhere along the line there, Istvan got by Karsten Borchers.
Just having a look back on my replay, he did come down into pit lane, so he was the first to blink there. So this will be interesting now to see how much later Ballard can stay out for to try and gap Borchers. He's not going to get the entire 16 seconds, but he's going to at least have part of the chance to make a little bit of that gap up.
It's interesting that he's the first one into the pit lanes. So I think fourth place might be where we find him when the checkers fly.
Yeah, so maybe Borchers was on a slightly less fuel age for this middle stint. As you see, Joe Mazzari and Mark Backmann still going tete-a-tete for first and second positions. I need to stop talking French in these race broadcasts. But keeping an eye out to see Joe Mazzari getting very, very tight there as they come into the carousel. That allowed Fangman to close all the way down, but it was single file into turn 13. Fangman had no opportunities to make the pass, but Backmann still keeping that relentless pressure on Joe Mazzari in the number 46.
Like I said before, Will, I think that's his intention. I don't think he intends to pass him right now at all, just to psych him out. I think he's really inside Joe Mazzari's head.
And let's not forget, Mark Fangman's statistics are just unbelievable. In the iRacing Official Series, it's a case of if he turns up, he wins the race. Currently standing on top of the iRacing Official Series Road division overall. Being a real force in the IndyCars in this 2012 season so far. And I tell you what, as this Afterburn IndyCar Series progresses, it's going to be amazing to watch himself, Ballard, Mazzari, Brandt, and also Marco Viitanen, if he comes back to race a couple more races this season, go head-to-head with each other, because these top 5 drivers are pretty much the class of the field when it comes to IndyCar road racing.
Well, and as you said before, in the official series, Mark Fangman shows up, he wins a race. Well, part of that is the fact that Nico Brandt, Marco Viitanen, Istvan Below aren't showing up to the same races. So he's not getting the same level of competition in every race in the official series as he does in the Afterburn series. So I think he's actually enjoying this because he is having to work. I mean, it's not always fun just running away from the crowd. He'd like to do some racing once in a while. He's definitely finding that here.
Yeah, we have less than 20 laps to go here at Mid-Ohio Sportscast. You are watching round 5 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series presented by Glacier TV. We're currently looking at Joe Mazzari and Mark Fangman. The story of the race so far has been a big crash in turn number 1, eliminating 3 drivers for the most part. You had a 4-car breakaway with Joe Mazzari, Mark Fangman, Nico Brandt, and Sean Stroud. Sean Stroud had a moment in the first quarter of the race to put him out of contention. Nico Brandt then had a crash with Dave Jinks just after the halfway point. As he was coming up to lap Dave Jinks lost it on the entry to turn number 1, had nowhere to go between each driver, and that put Brandt out of the race. And now we are looking at Mazzari and Fangman really putting the pressure on, as they are currently the only two guys in the lead lap, as Ballow, I believe, has come down into pit lane.
Yeah, it looks like, Isvan is pitted, so he's the next one down in your kind of cycle of on the lead lap. So we're just waiting for Dror and Mark Fangman. So what do you think? Do you think Mark will come down with Dror this time to try to beat him out of the pits and gain position, or will he stay out on the track like he did last time?
It all depends on how much Fangman's been using his tyres in this stint. If he thinks that he can stay out for a lap, as you see Mazzari getting seriously held up there by Rene Murray, and this is what I say, it's single file for pretty much the most part through this part of the racetrack. Mazzari is able to get down on the right-hand side of Rene Murray, so does Mark Fangman, but if Mark Fangman thinks that he can stay out for a couple of laps and put a gap over Mazzari, then it's all for it. If not, he's going to have to make sure he nails his pit stop, as once they come back out, it'll be a case of race resumed.
Well, and as you see there, Mark Fangman had an opportunity to possibly capitalize a little bit, and he chooses not to. He's putting the pressure on, but he's not really on the rear wing.
If you've ever watched Kill Bill, and you know what whistly theme music I'm talking about, I've got a very bad feeling that Fangman is currently humming that in his race helmet, as he's still hunting down Mazzari, not really making a move, not really showing his hand, waiting until this last pit stop. We've got 17 laps to go at the line, but this race is far from over.
Oh, that's right. And to me, I think Dror thinks that Mark Fangman was attached to him with a rope, because he's not going anywhere. No matter what he tries, he just can't shake that off of his rear wing at all.
But let's give credit where credit is due. Mazzari has done a great job in holding off Fangman for not only this number of laps, but keeping the lead for so long in this race, losing it only to Nico Brandt earlier on, before Nico Brandt had his moment. As you see, cars getting held up there down to turn number 1. This is going to allow Mark Fangman to have that opportunity to close it. It was Dave Jinks just trying to go slowly to give a bit of space, but a single file through there, and Mazzari manages to get away with that one. But now he's going to have, I believe, that Giorgio Ponti coming, who's going to be going a lap down again, and it looks as though they're going to catch him at a horrible place. But Ponti there, just moving away, saying that I do not want to be hounded through the China Bend and the S's. You guys just go ahead.
Yeah, and looking back a little bit, in third place now is Carson Borchers, who came out on top of that last pit stop there, and Istvan below it. But he's way behind Carson Borchers currently.
Well, the gap,
what happened there?
The gap was 16 seconds between them. I'm having a look now, I'm doing mental maths, and it does look as though that gap is a lot further than it was earlier on, as Carson Borchers is entering the carousel now, and meanwhile, Istvan Ballow is just coming on to Thunder Valley.
Yeah, so once again, he's finding himself in needing to get to the charge. He's going to find himself out of laps here. So I'm not sure how he managed to let that gap get so big.
So, draw Mazzari in pit lane. Mazzari is into pit lane. So we're keeping an eye out of him as he gets his 4 tyres and topping up with Sunoco race gas, bringing it out. Look at the double yellow lines and the curb. He cannot rejoin the racetrack until he goes past that point. As now he comes back onto the racetrack. Thankfully, he's ahead of both Alan Wilson and Andrew Aitken as he comes down into the keyhole. We're now going to have to go straight to look at Mark Fangman to see when he comes down pit lane. He is currently going through the China Bend, and it will be a case of how many more laps can Fangman stay out for, and how much damage can he do to that lead of Mazzari in the next couple of laps.
Well, the thing is, if he comes down now, can he have such a short pit that he can get back out and maintain his lead, or is he going to try to close that gap? Yep, he's going to go again. So I don't know if that's necessarily a smart move, because Dror is fast enough to where he may not get any more gap than he has now.
Well, by my maths, each gallon you put into the tank takes half a second to put in. So for every lap that he stays out, he is going to be gaining himself about 0.3 of a second in pit lane. So if Fangman can stay out here, even for 3 or 4 laps, then he is going to have the opportunity to take the race lead and Last time by, fastest lap, Mark Fangman, 1:10.350. Fangman has just pounced.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was talking about. I think he was in the catbird seat the entire time, and this was part of his strategy. So we'll see if this works out for him in the end. But it does appear that letting Dror Mazzari stay in front of him this whole time was part of the plan.
Well, yeah, and as I say, passing is so difficult here at Mid-Ohio that you don't want to put yourself into a position where you could end up ruining yours or another driver's race. And one thing I think that Fangman was looking at as well, to see how he would get held up in relation to other drivers, and it does look as though he's going to have a much better run through this traffic, as he's going to likely catch Giorgio Ponti down towards the keyhole. So it does look as though he's going to have a very easy run of the traffic, but thankfully for Mazzari, he was able to get out just ahead of Wilson and Andrew Aitken.
Yeah, and as you see, the other drivers, the lap drivers, are kind of getting out of the way on the straights there, which is a good thing, so we don't, impede our leaders. And it's good that you got a lot of drivers out there that have the courtesy to do that without, ruining somebody else's race. So, again, Mark Fangman out there on the track, and it looks like everything's turning out the way he's planning it.
So if Mark and Fangman can do just 2 more laps of this type of pace, he will pretty much guarantee himself the race lead unless he has a travesty in pit lane. He is your race leader. Currently second is Dror Mazzari. Carson Borges is in third. Esteban Balao in fourth. We talked about what that gap was between Carson Borges, who's currently sat in the third position, and Esteban Balao in fourth. And at the moment, Carson Borges is coming down past the start-finish line to complete his lap 57. Esteban Balao is just coming through the carousel now. So the gap is about 11-12 seconds between the two of them. But, as you were saying earlier, he's running out of laps.
That's interesting, too. Mark Fangman's still out there. We're going to see what he does. It's always good when you can get past your competitor, the person in front of you, without actually having to get past them. So this is working in his favor. Again, I think to see whether Istvan Below is going to be able to overtake Carson Borchers, or whether Carson Borchers is going to go ahead and podium this race and be happy with that, and I think he will be. I was kind of looking at the Mark Larson, Jussi Niemann race that just never came to fruition. We thought early on that those two were going to do battle, and it's just not happening. And
this will be slightly disappointing again for Mike Larson. He said he wanted a top 5 out of this race and Watkins Glen. He's currently sat in the 6th position, and looking back, just seeing if he has any form of opportunity to get his 5th, doesn't look like he does at all. Unless Nimmerman or one of the other cars ahead make a serious mistake, it does look as though Mike Larson is going to get a 6th position again. But without taking credit away from Larson, this will be his second top 10 finish on the trot, and in some points, consistency is worth a lot more than a race win.
Oh yes, it is, especially on the points. So he's coming up there. He wanted the top 5. He's currently in 6th place. He is running slightly faster lap times some of the time than Jussi Niemann, but it's just not enough. I don't think there's enough race left for Mike Larson to, unless Jussi Niemann makes a serious mistake.
Yeah, I'm having a look at Mike Larson. His lap times are pretty consistent at the moment, but he just hasn't got the lap to hunt down Jussi Niemann in that number 82 machine. And I'm guessing that Mike Larson was just hoping for another 10-15 laps. Maybe he can make the move. Fangman getting very squared. Now Fangman comes down into pit lane at the end of lap number 59, breaking it down to 45 miles an hour. He is going to make that his second and final stop here at Mid-Ohio. And all eyes will now be on Dror Mazzari to see where he is on the racetrack.
Can he get that pit done and get out there?
What Mazzari doesn't know is that he's got the chance now. He doesn't know Fangman's in pit lane, but he's been held up three times there by John Ailes, and this could give that lead back to Mark Fangman as he comes out of pit lane. Mazzari is going to be 2 seconds behind, and Mark Fangman, from being in 2nd position before this pit stop, now has a 2-second lead on the number 46 machine of Dror Mazzari.
I think that plays into exactly what he wanted. Comes out of pit. He's still in the lead. Drewer is now, it's up to Drewer. He has to do the chasing now. And I think Mark Fangman's where he likes to be is you give him some open air past these cars, and I think you're going to continue to see him throw some lap times down, especially now that he's got fresh tires. Once they'll settle in, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
While Drew Mazzari, did do a valiant job there, he set some of his fastest laps when he came out of pit lane. 1 minute 10.4, 1 minute 10.9, and 1 minute 10.8. He was seriously held up by a couple of back markers as he was making his approach into pit lane. And had that not have been the case, having looked through the lap times, it would have been at least a second closer than it was.
And we're about to see how Istvan Below does under lap pressure, because it looks like Mark Fangman is definitely closing on him faster than he's closing on his rival Karsten Borchers. I think they're both going to see Karsten Borchers is going to go a lap down as well as Istvan Below. I'd be surprised if he can hold him off.
Yeah, so we have less than 10 laps to go here at Mid-Ohio Sports Course. You're watching round 5 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series on Glacier TV. Will Vincent, Doyle Johnson in the booth all race long. And I'll tell you what, Fangman now has not led an entire lap until we got to the sequence of pit stops. But from out of nowhere, he pulls the joker out of the hat and gets himself a nice 2-second lead.
George Mazzari has closed the gap a little bit as Mark Fangman gets into some of that lap traffic. Istvan Below is not somebody who's used to seeing the leader in his rearview mirror, so he's going to go ahead and pull over and let him by. That was
very smart.
That's really good. Yes,
and not only that, but the way he did that, he knew that he was going to lose less time by doing that than if he was trying to fight Mark Fangman as they went through the tight, twisty section of this racetrack later on. So now he can use Fangman in some ways to his advantage to help give him a little bit of a slipstream as he tries to close down Karsten Borchers. Borchers is currently going through the China Bend. I honestly do not think that Barrow is going to be able to make that move up into third position. But, again, if you don't put the pressure on, as we saw at Mossport, you're not going to be able to do the job. And pressure sometimes really can mean the difference between a fourth and a third.
Yeah, some drivers handle that better than others, so it plays a factor in a race like this. Is, can you handle the pressure, or can you do like you were talking about, just kind of block it all out, get in your zone, run your race? I think most drivers have a lot of trouble with that. They race in their mirrors and in front, and that definitely matters.
So, I mean, you said that, you thought that Fangman was, keeping a little bit in reserve until Mazzari came down pit lane. How I'm trying to find the word is, how comfortable do you have to be in your own speed to be able to do that?
Well, I think you have to be real comfortable, and we've seen, even though, we saw a lot of it round 1 of the Afterburn series here when Mark Fangman pretty much dominated it at Daytona, but then he was kind of quiet there for the next couple of races. But as you say, in the regular series, Mark Fangman is very used to being in full control of the race at all times. So I think once again he'd managed to calm it down and get control of his car and the situation, and I think he'd have this plan from the beginning, including the pit stop strategy.
Yeah, a great thinker is Mark Fangman, managing to think his way to the lead of this race, and not only thinking his lead of this race, he's now building up that gap. It's up to 3.2 seconds to Drew Mazzari in that number 46 machine, as Mazzari is still getting all kinds of sideways. To be fair, let's not take anything away from Mazzari. He has done a sterling job in this race so far. And also, Karsten Borchers in third, a sterling drive by him as well. He looks as though he's going to be the third and only car to finish on the lead lap here. But in that number 77 machine, Borchers, we've not really talked about him, but he's done a great job. He's been able to hold off the fast-charging Istvan Below, and from qualifying in this race, he, qualified 5th, managed to take 3rd in the race, or looking like he might be able to take 3rd in the race. Could he ask anything else?
I don't think so. I think he's probably put a lot of time into this track preparing for this race, and it's definitely showing. He's keeping it under control, under pressure. I mean, he's been being chased by his fan below. He's being, he's got the leader, Mark Fangman and Dror Mizari in his rearview mirror, and he continues to run consistent lap times, and it's going to pay off for him here in the end, I'm sure.
Well, I'll tell you what, this has been some really good racing today here at Mid-Ohio. To run through your retirement one more time, Jeffrey Kohlberg retired at the towards the start of this race. Brian Simpson is out. Sean Stroud is out of the race. Randy Crosno is out. Perhaps the biggest retirement of the day is that of the number 24 machine of Nico Bram, who was involved in a huge incident with Dave Jinks coming to turn number 1. Dave Jinks just losing the car on entry to turn 1, spinning the car to the left on towards that curb. Nico Bram had nowhere to go, literally couldn't take the car out to the way anymore, and it cost Nico Bram the shot of a win here. And from what I've heard, Nico Bram is extremely disappointed.
Well, and you certainly can't blame him for that. And that's going to happen. Any racer is going to be really disappointed when you know you have enough car and enough talent to be a contender and possibly pull out a win or at least a podium finish, and instead you're sitting in pit lane watching the race. So that's got to be a heartbreaker for him and his crew. So hats off to Nico Brandt for a good race, while he was in it.
And I'll tell you what, sorry.
Excuse me. Go ahead, Will.
I'm saying Nico Brandt, though, must be looking desperately to bounce back at Watkins Glen next week. He did so well there last season, but he really needs to start getting his season underway.
Yeah, and last season, he was pretty well the dominant force, and in this season, we've got a high caliber of racers in the race, so everybody's going to have to earn their spot, and nobody, so far as you've seen, since we've had different people winning different races, there is no dominant force here. At any race, at any time, there's enough talented drivers that could take the checkers.
So we've got less than 5 laps to go here at the Mid-Ohio Sports Course. Mark Fangman is still your race leader, with Dror Mizari in second, Carson Borches in third, Istvan Badal in fourth, and GC Ninonen rounding out your top 5. Only 3 cars on the lead lap, but let's not take anything away from these drivers. Be completely honest, Mizari, Fangman and Brandt early on have been the class of the field, and on a racetrack that doesn't see full course cautions very often, this field has been allowed to spread out quite a lot, and because of that, it looks as though that drivers haven't been doing very well, but in reality, a second, 2 seconds a lap slower translates into quite a lot over a 70-lap race distance.
Yeah, and then, speaking of race distance, I think what we're seeing now, if you look at Mark Fangman, a full 7 seconds ahead of Dror Mizari. This is the Mark Fangman that we expected to see at the beginning of the season that kind of was a little quiet for the last couple of races. But as I talked about earlier, obviously he had more about him than he was showing earlier on in the race, because he is just right now, he is totally dominating.
His last lap, a 1 minute 9.797. That is only 0.3 of a second slower than his qualifying lap, and that lap would have put him in the top 3 in qualifying.
Yeah, this guy is really, when he's got it together, he's almost a phenomenon as far as his ability to navigate the race course in the least amount of time. Will, would you happen to know what the track record is here?
Not quite sure. I'm definitely going to have a look. As Rene Murray going very slowly. I believe that Rene Murray is out of fuel in the number 15 Eastern Canada car, coasting the car round turn number 1. No, so looks like he's bringing it back up to speed. So perhaps he was just letting all these cars go past him. No, Murray is out of fuel. Rene Murray is out of fuel. So Rene Murray, who, he's had a pretty strong race today, was currently in 11th position. Looks as though he's not going to lose too much more now, but disappointment there for Rene Murray.
Well, yeah, and then you have to ask yourself, how do you let yourself run out of fuel, especially when you're 5 laps down? There's no reason not to pit. There is nothing to gain. Everybody behind him, is too far behind him. There's nothing to lose. So it's kind of an interesting strategy that his crew, let him run out of fuel like that.
The race record is a 1 minute 9.2 set by Young O. I believe that was in the iRacing Premier Series last year. But let's not, he might be 5 tenths of a second slower. However, let's not forget, Fangman has been doing 68.2 laps now of this racetrack. And Young O would have done nowhere near that. So for Fangman, this is still a sterling effort by him, as he's got himself now about 1.5 laps to go here at Mid-Ohio. Mark Fangman surely now is on his way to race victory. Drew Mazzari 10 seconds behind. Carson Borges is in third, 1 minute 6 seconds behind the race leader. Esteban Badal pretty much has no chance of catching Carson Borges unless Borges makes a mistake in these last couple of laps. So as Mark Fangman comes around the China bends, he's got one more lap to go when he goes past the stripe. And tell you what, Fangman didn't look too comfortable early on in this race. We thought whether or not he'd be struggling to even keep hold of the third position. But the second half of this race, he's just completely dominated.
Yeah, and that's interesting, though. The track records, Young O, it might be something that if he's that fast, we might want to contact him and invite him to come out here, because there's some drivers in here that will give him a run for his money. And that's interesting that he races in the Oval Series, but is not really elected to run in the road course. And that's interesting, since he has the track record.
Yeah, Young O and Tim Doyle, two of the biggest names in IndyCar on the iRacing service, only scheduled to run the ovals this season on the Afterburn IndyCar series. But yeah, it would be definitely interesting to see whether or not any of them turn up at the most popular road course on the Afterburn IndyCar series, Watkins Glen, next week. Mark Fangman has less than half a lap to go now. If I was Carson Borges, I'd probably just pull off the side of the road to avoid myself having to do that one extra lap. Mark Fangman literally now coming through Thunder Valley for the final time. He is now going to come down, make that right-hand kink, then flick it to the left-hand side, coming through the carousel for the final time, and then bringing it all the way to the right-hand side. Then that final flick to the left. Mark Fangman, coming out of turn number 13, wins round 5 of the Afterburn IndyCar Series at Mid-Ohio.
Congratulations to Mark Fangman and the rest of our top three, Dror Mazzari and Karsten Borchers. Congrats to Dror, who led many, many laps on this race, and Karsten Borchers, who kind of was the dark horse, kind of a Cinderella story, holding on to third place and the only other car on the lead lap. Congratulations to him as well. He's raced a phenomenal race to even be where he's at today. So congratulations to the top three.
Dror Mazzari comes home in the second position. Carson Borchers has one more lap to do. Unfortunate for him. So he is still out on the racetrack. Esteban Badal is scored as 4th. UC Nimmerman in 5th. Mike Larson in 6th. Andrew Aitken 7th. Alan Wilson in 8th. Giorgio Ponti 9th. And John Ailes in the 10th position. And Doyle, as we do on all the road courses, driver of the day.
Well, driver of the day for me has to be Karsten Borchers. He's driving above what we expected. Mark Fangman, we expect these kinds of things. Dror Mazzari, always a constant performer, so it's Sven below charging up from that original first wreck up to 4th position. These are all things that we come to expect. But Karsten Borchers is, for me, the driver of the day, because he pulled off something that at the beginning of the race I don't think anybody would have said would be possible, but yet there he is.
Carson Borchers, yeah, definitely my nomination for driver of the day as well. Esteban Badal did a sterling job riding his way back up into the 4th position, but Borchers managed to hold off the fast-charging Esteban Badal in that number 22 machine. My only disappointment was I would have loved to have seen how that race would have unfolded had we have had Fangman, Mazzari and Nico Brand, and perhaps Sean Stroud as well. Those 4 drivers were clearly the class of the field early on in this race. So unfortunate to see both Nico Brand and Sean Stroud eliminated earlier on. But still, we had a great race there at the end. Mark Fangman taking bragging rights by 15 seconds at the end from Joel Mazzari. So to run through your final race results, Mark Fangman in the number 8 machine takes race victory and all the points that go with it. In the number 8 car, Joel Mazzari finishes in 2nd. Carson Borch is in 3rd. Istvan Badal in 4th, 1 lap down. Jussi Nidman in 5th. Mike Larson in 6th. Andrew Aitken 7th. Alan Wilson in 8th. Giorgio Ponti in 9th. John Ailes in 10th. Rene Murray 11th. Dave Jinks in 12th. Then your retirements, Nico Brand, Randy Krosno, Sean Stroud, Brian Simpson, Jeffrey Kohlbergen, and Mark Warmington.
Yeah, it's a great race. Well, great race. I'm really looking forward to next week and seeing what kind of people come out to that race and what we have here, because we definitely have a great field of road racers. So that promises to be really exciting, and I think everybody should come back next week and see what that's got for us, because it will be exciting.
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't got any time for post-race interviews today, as the entirety of the IndyCar world moves their eyes over to Barber Motorsports Park for round 2 of the IndyCar series in real life. Don't forget, you can keep up with all of that by joining the Afterburn social hub on teamafterburn.com. We'll be back next week for round 6 of the Afterburn IndyCar series. That will take place at the historic Watkins Glen. Not only will we be using that, but we'll be using the classic boot layout, which was made as a mistake last year, but created some of the best racing in Afterburn IndyCar series history. So look out for that race next week, same time, same place. Meanwhile, for myself, from Doyle Johnson and everyone at Glacier TV, we wish you a very good afternoon, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your week.
Good afternoon, everybody. See you next week.